Let's talk about something that's going to make half of you furious and the other half think I've completely lost my mind. Kyle Tucker's price tag, $400 million, maybe more. And I'm going to say something that I think needs to be said, but nobody wants to hear. That contract could absolutely destroy this franchise. I'm not saying Tucker isn't great. I'm not saying he's not worth a massive payday. What I'm saying is that $400 million for any player is a franchise-altering decision, and if it goes wrong, if Tucker gets hurt, if he regresses, if he doesn't age well, the Blue Jays are cooked for a decade, and I don't think people are taking that risk seriously enough. Let me start with the obvious. Kyle Tucker is an elite player right now. He hit over 300 last year, crushed nearly 30 home runs, drove in over 100 runs, plays Gold Glove defense, steals bases, does everything you want. At 27 years old, he's entering what should be his prime years. On paper, this is exactly the kind of player you throw money at. I get it. When a generational talent becomes available, you don't hesitate. You secure him. You build around him. That's the conventional wisdom. But conventional wisdom doesn't always account for the catastrophic downside. And with a $400 million contract, the downside is absolutely catastrophic. Here's what $400 million means in practical terms. You're committing roughly $40 million per year for 10 years, maybe a little more if it's a longer deal with deferrals. That's $40 million that cannot go anywhere else. Every single year for the next decade, a massive chunk of your payroll is spoken for before you even start building the rest of the roster. Now, if Tucker produces like an MVP every single year, great, that's money well spent. But what are the actual odds of that happening? How many players have lived up to contracts this size? Let's look at the track record. Mike Trout signed his mega extension with the Angels. He's been hurt constantly, and the Angels have been a disaster, and they've wasted his entire prime because they couldn't build around that contract. Bryce Harper got his massive deal from the Phillies, and while he's been good, the Phillies are constantly scrambling to fill holes around him because so much money is tied up in a few players. Mookie Betts got paid by the Dodgers, and yeah, they won a championship, but the Dodgers also have unlimited money and can afford to make mistakes. Toronto doesn't have that luxury. If this Tucker contract goes sideways, there's no safety net. There's no ability to just spend your way out of the problem like Los Angeles can. And let's talk about the injury risk because this is huge. Tucker has been relatively healthy throughout his career, which is great, but he's also never played a full 162-game season. He's had nagging injuries here and there, nothing major. But once you get into your late 20s and early 30s, those nagging injuries become chronic issues. Look at what happened to George Springer. Guy was an Iron Man in Houston, comes to Toronto, and suddenly he can't stay on the field. His production has dropped, he's constantly dealing with something, and the Blue Jays are stuck paying him massive money for diminished returns. Now imagine that happening with Tucker at twice the price. Baseball players age poorly compared to other sports. A basketball player can adjust their game and still be effective in their mid-30s. A football quarterback can play into their 40s now. But baseball players, once that bat speed goes, once the reflexes slow down just a little bit, production falls off a cliff. Tucker's game is built on being a five-tool player. He hits for average and power. He's fast. He plays great defense. But speed goes first. 30-year-old Kyle Tucker is not going to be stealing bases like 27-year-old Kyle Tucker. His defense in the outfield will decline. Suddenly you're paying $40 million a year for a guy who's a DH or a corner outfielder with declining range. Is that still worth it? Maybe, but it's not what you paid for. Here's another thing that really concerns me. Tucker has played his entire career in Houston, one of the most well-run organizations in baseball. He's been surrounded by talent, coached by some of the best minds in the game, played in a hitter-friendly park, and had a great lineup around him. How much of his success is because of that environment? We've seen this movie before. Players leave great situations, go to new teams with big contracts, and suddenly they're not the same guy. The pressure's different. The support system is different. The ballpark is different. Rogers Center isn't exactly Minute Maid Park. What if Tucker's numbers take a hit just from the environmental changes? And let's be brutally honest about something else. $400 million means the Blue Jays cannot afford to make mistakes anywhere else on the roster. Your bullpen better be perfect because you can't afford to go fix it if it's not. Your starting rotation better stay healthy because you won't have money for quality depth. Your bench better be productive because you're filling it with minimum salary players. One bad injury, one underperforming unit, and your season is toast because you have no financial flexibility to address it. That's the reality of these mega contracts. They're all or nothing propositions. Now, some of you are probably screaming at your screens right now saying, I'm being too negative, that you have to take risks to win championships, that Tucker is worth it. And look, I understand that perspective. I really do. But let me ask you this. Would you rather have Kyle Tucker at $400 million, or would you rather have Tucker's production spread across multiple players with more flexibility? What if instead of giving Tucker $40 million a year, you signed two really good players at $20 million each? You'd have more depth, more versatility, more ability to adjust if something goes wrong. Is Tucker really worth two elite players? I'm not sure he is. The other nightmare scenario nobody wants to talk about is what happens if Tucker just doesn't want to be in Toronto long term. What if the Blue Jays give him this massive extension and 2 years in he's miserable? The weather sucks. He doesn't like the city. The pressure's too much, whatever. You think he's going to opt out if there's an opt-out clause? You think he won't try to force a trade? And if that happens, you're stuck. You can't move a $400 million contract easily. You'd have to eat money, you'd get worse prospects back, and you'd be in salary cap hell for years. Let me give you a specific comparison that I think illustrates the risk here. Remember when the Angels gave Albert Pujols that massive contract? First couple years were fine, and then he completely fell off a cliff. The Angels were stuck paying him huge money to be a below-average player for years. They couldn't get out from under it. It hamstrung their entire roster construction, and it contributed to wasting Mike Trout's prime. Now, Tucker is younger than Pujols was when he signed, so maybe he ages better. But the principle's the same. These contracts are anchors. If the player doesn't live up to them, you're drowning. Here's what really keeps me up at night about this. The Blue Jays just lost Game 7 of the World Series. They were right there. They had a championship roster that didn't get it done. The logical response isn't to throw more money at the problem. It's to figure out what went wrong and fix it. Maybe what went wrong was bullpen construction. Maybe it was in game management. Maybe it was clutch hitting. But I don't think the issue was not having Kyle Tucker. They got to Game 7 without him. So why is the solution to mortgage the next decade on a player who, as great as he is, might not actually move the needle as much as people think? And let's talk about opportunity cost. $400 million for Tucker means Bo Bichette walks. It probably means you can't extend Vlad Guerrero long term. It means you're operating with a skeleton crew in terms of depth and flexibility. Is Tucker really so much better than Bo that it's worth all those sacrifices? I'm not convinced. Bo's younger, he's homegrown, he's cheaper. And while Tucker is the better player right now, the gap isn't as massive as some people think. If you're choosing between Tucker at $400 million and Bo at $300 million with extra money left over for other needs, I'm taking Bo every single time. Look, I want to be wrong about this. I want Tucker to sign, dominate for 10 years, lead Toronto to multiple championships, and make me look like an idiot. But I've watched baseball long enough to know how these mega contracts usually end. They end with regret. They end with teams trapped, unable to compete, watching their window close because they're paying for past production instead of current value. The Blue Jays are playing Russian roulette with their franchise, and I just hope they know what they're getting into. Because $400 million isn't just a contract, it's a decade-long commitment that could either make them champions or turn them into a cautionary tale.